Hey everyone, I hope you guys are still doing fine in quarantine. It's loosened up a little bit here in Georgia, but I am pretty much staying put. So we are, if you're just joining us, we are reading Roberto Valenzuela's Picture Perfect Practice. Here's the book. And we are going through chapter by chapter, and we are training our eye to see different things, different elements. And this week we are looking for reflections. And reflections is a fun one because it's pretty easy. It isn't quite as tricky in terms of the actual camera settings as silhouettes was last week. And this is something that you can look for everywhere. It doesn't have to be just in a mirror or a large body of water. You can find reflections almost anywhere. So we're going to look at some ways that I've used reflections, and I'm also going to show you the first picture that I ever really noticed a reflection being used as kind of in a really cool way. I pulled up some, and then this week I saw a picture in the news on the AP Associated Press. It was Jared Kushner, but they used reflections to actually make it a really cool picture. So I'm not getting all political. I just thought it was a really cool reflection picture. And it was a way to take a simple thing like wearing a mask and, think of how many mask pictures are out there right now. Tons of them. So they took this picture of Jared Kushner wearing a mask and they used reflections to make it different and more interesting and to tell the story and to set their picture apart from all the other mask pictures out there. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive right in. Okay, so when I was looking for examples from my photos, I found an oldie but goodie that we used in chapter 1 for geometry. And I was watching a TV show, which is the greatest place to find examples of all this stuff. Start noticing it when you're watching TV because the cinematographers and photographers on the shows use this stuff all the time. So this was for geometry using the square, but also look at her. We're actually seeing her through her reflection. And that's one of the things that he uses. He talks about using reflections in a single mirror. So telling the story with a mirror. So whether you're showing the front side of one thing and the back side of the other, or you're showing it at an angle where you're showing the subject and maybe somebody else in the scene also in the mirror that you don't see in the main subject. I'm actually going to do an Instagram live, or not a live, but a story. I want to show you guys. Last night I was watching Dead to Me season 2, which I highly recommend. And they used mirrors in an entire scene. And they kept flipping back and forth, but they would show the back of the one character's head and her face in the mirror, but you'd see the other character talking to her also in the mirror, but you didn't see her on camera. So this is stuff that's used all the time, and the whole purpose of this book club is to train your eye to start looking for it and then looking for ways to incorporate it in your photography. And it could be iPhone photography or big girl camera photography. It really doesn't matter. And especially in the case of reflections, it's so easy to do in terms of your camera settings that it's something that you can easily practice just with your camera phone. So let's go through some other examples. Here's a simple, I shot into the mirror. I focused on her eyelashes. And so I'm just telling the story of what she's doing, but you don't actually see her. You're only seeing her reflection. So that's one way to use a mirror. Now this is an iPhone photo. This is not a great photo. I am only using this. It's because it's the only example I had. I need to go shoot something new, but it was a perfect example, so forgive the actual photo. But here we were trying on my daughter Cameron's prom dress, and this was a perfect example of using your camera to show the back of the dress and then using the mirror to show the front of the dress. And here, the way that the mirrors are layered, it actually also shows some repetition, which he shows in one of his examples using more than one mirror. So this is a great way to show front and back, and he uses this specific example in one of his examples. So again, forgive the actual picture. I just wanted to show you to be looking for that if you have more than one mirror, how you can show front and back, or even if you don't have one mirror, just shooting her into a mirror where you can show, her hair and her makeup, for example. Now this was just a fun little installation they put. We were at Clickaway out in Dana Point, California, and they put a mirror just out in the middle of the lawn, and we used it for all kinds of crazy photos. So you can see what you're seeing right in the middle here is just a reflection of what's behind us. But over on the side, this is what actually they were taking pictures towards me. So we did all kinds of, we kept moving around and looking for different reflections. So that was a lot of fun, just kind of a creative way to use reflections. Now here, he uses examples of using bodies of water. And so this is kind of a more straightforward, you can have people in it. This was out in the Great Salt Lake. And you can see that you have the sky reflected in the still water. You have the girls reflected in the water. It just makes for a little bit more interesting scene. I've used this picture before, but again, when you have really still water, you can get really beautiful reflections in the water. Now here's a little bit different. Here we got a little bit creative where we actually cropped off the real image. And so here, you know, we had them all the way up, but what we focused on was the reflection. And so the colors, the little bit of movement in the water added some texture and a little bit of a painterly feel. So, you know, again, you wouldn't use this as like your main picture, but this is a nice way to add variety to your shots where if you're taking a picture of a couple and you're doing a lot of the traditional photos, this is a way to add some interest and difference, like if you were putting an album together, to just make something pop a little bit more. Again, I was out with my daughter. This was the side of a marble building in downtown Atlanta, and I noticed that you could see the reflection in there. And so I just had her cross her legs, and we did kind of a, you know, like a balanced reflection shot. So that's where you can kind of find reflections in unlikely places. You know, sides of buildings, glasses. If you start paying attention, you'll be amazed at what you see and the story that you can tell. And I told you I was going to tell you, I was going to show you one of the first pictures that I ever saw. So this was taken, oh gosh, this was back around 2000 and I thought they told me 12. Okay, so this is the 2012 spring training. And this was in Sports Illustrated. I remember it because I was just really getting serious about photography, and I was starting to look at Sports Illustrated as a favorite of mine just for looking at all the ways that the photographers tell stories different ways because, you know, sports is repetitive. It's the same thing every week. So they're always, the photographers are so creative. They're always coming up with new ways to tell the same story. And I loved this. This was actually spring training. And you can see in his mirrored glasses, you can see all the photographers lined up. You can see all the reporters lined up. And so instead of just showing the photographers and showing the reporters, they're actually using the players' glasses to tell that story. And I remembered this. I pinned it. I pinned this picture up to my bulletin board across from my desk. I was still working at the time, and I looked at it all the time. And then I started really noticing pictures in sunglasses, you know, reflections where I might not have looked before. So look for a way that you can tell a story within that reflection, and it'll make your pictures have a lot more variety and a lot more interest. Now here's the one I saw the other morning. Oops, not that one. So this, oh, I lied to you. There's no mask. Okay, I thought he had a mask on. But anyway, I liked how, you know, there's a million, if you search Jared Kushner or any person and you look at the images on, you know, Google Images, you see like a lot of the same picture, right? So this is just a way of showing the same person in a completely different way. And in this case, it's in multiple repetitions. I don't even know what he's reflected in, but you have kind of the balance. You've got the curtain over here. You've got the blue of the curtain reflecting into this panel. Again, I don't even know what that is. So it kind of, the blue matches the blue. It's balanced. And then you kind of have, you know, the double reflection, which gives it interest. He's facing each other. So again, I just like this picture. This is not political or anything. I just, you know, think about how if you photograph the same person a lot, how do you photograph the same person in a different way to make it less repetitive and more interesting and to tell your story? And so again, this tells the story, I think, by the look on his face, by the direction he's walking. He's got something in his hands, and the reflections just add to that. So be thinking about that when you are taking photos. All right, so back to my other pictures here. So now Roberto also talks about using multiple mirrors and multiple reflective surfaces to tell your story. So here, this is my friend Anita that you're probably all familiar with. And we are walking in, where were we? Oh, we were in Charleston, South Carolina. Forgot. And she was walking and I saw all these empty windows and I could see her reflection. I could see the multiple reflections. So we actually kind of set this one up. But I went across the street and I said, Anita, I need you to walk from here to here. And then I photographed her as she walked and I could see her in all the multiple reflections. So again, I could have taken just a picture of Anita walking and it would have been a cool picture. Like she looks nice and cool and I like her outfit. But I think it's a lot more interesting. There's more texture, there's parallel lines, there's geometry. There's a lot more to the photo when you see it through a reflection. So again, it's like I could have just taken this picture of her, but instead she's over here somewhere and I'm seeing what she's doing through the reflection. So that's a fun one. I love window reflections. So this one was taken through the window. This was an anniversary shot. Very, very beautiful woman, Valerie. And I loved how I could capture them and get all the reflections in the windows, which I think adds depth and texture and interest to the photo. And it almost looks like we're peeking in on a private moment. So it gives it a little bit more emotion. It makes it a little bit different than just the straight on couple shot that looks more posed. I think this looks less posed, even though it was. So that's a great way to use window light. Again, here is my daughter. We were shopping in Boulder, Colorado. She loves books. She was looking at some books on the outside that were for sale, kind of like a book bin. And so I captured her. You can see the geometry that we've talked about, the depth. You can see the layers in the photo, but you can see exactly what she's doing. She's looking down, she's looking at something, but we're getting the story of where we are through the books in the window. So that's a really fun way to use reflections. So now one of the assignments is to actually tell a story through a reflection. So pretty simple. Look at the exercise and then if you would post it and let us see what story you're telling, I think that would be really fun. So now he also talks about using bodies of water. And so here's a simple, we were walking on the beach. This is my older daughter's, we were taking some senior pictures on the beach in Hilton Head. And here we just get a beautiful reflection of her dress and the sun below her. So it adds some interest to an already pretty picture, I think. Now this is one of my all-time favorite photos of myself. Of course, I did not take it. Anita Klein took it with her iPhone. So this is not even a big girl school or a big girl camera picture. We were walking, or maybe it is, I can't remember. It might be iPhone, it might be big girl. I really don't remember. I think it's iPhone. Wait a minute. Oh, it's iPhone. There it says, iPhone 8 Plus, back camera, boom. So we were walking at Clickaway, taking some other photos, and then all of a sudden she was like, stop. And there was this huge puddle in the middle of the road. The sky was beautiful and clear. And she's like, stand there. So I stood there with my camera. So, you know, it tells a story. What were we doing? We were out taking photographs. It was a windy day. But I think the coolest thing is she flipped the photo. This is the original photo. Okay, which it's still a cool photo, but you can tell, like, here's my real feet and my real legs. But when you flip it, it's hard to tell. It looks like that's the real photo. You have to really look at that to realize that that's a reflection in a puddle. So all-time favorite photos. Kudos to Anita. She's the one that saw the puddle and took the photo, and I absolutely love it. So, okay, this is just a photo of my daughter we were taking on the beach. And here we got a little bit creative, kind of the same idea as last time. So if I flip to the next photo, what I did was obviously I edited it a little bit to make it a little warmer. But this is kind of the real scene here. She was walking. There's the reflection below her. And what I did was I cropped it in and I flipped it. And it looks a little bit more like surreal, more like a painting. Now, sometimes you can get reflections when the water comes in on the horizon that's really smooth and clear and it looks like almost like a photo like the other. But here, there's a little bit more ripple in the water. There's a little more texture in the sand. So these are her real feet down here. And I flipped it to make the, excuse me. sorry. I flipped it to make her look like she's walking, but the ripples make it look more painterly. So I thought that was kind of fun. So you experiment with flipping your photos and using the reflection as the real photo. There's lots of ways that you can go with this. Again, here we're just driving through Sedona, and I looked in my rear view mirror and it was so beautiful. So I was getting exactly what was being reflected behind me, but you can see that we're driving through the the aperture on the camera blurred out what was in front of us. So it really brings focus to the red rocks in Sedona that was behind us. And you can see some of the reflections in the window over here. So that's a fun way to capture a car trip or just driving in the car in a new way. So I could have just looked out the car window and taken the photo. But again, you might not even have known I was in a car. So here you can see that I'm driving, I'm on the road, I'm in a car. You can see what's behind me, what's ahead of me. Another way to tell the story. So back to the sunglasses. So Miss Anita has the most amazing sunglasses, and we have captured more details of more cities on our fun photo adventures with these glasses. And so get yourself a pair of myriad sunglasses and get your friend one and go out and take pictures, because it is so much fun to see what you see in these. I'll be like, oh my gosh, turn your head. And so here she just turned towards the rainbow crosswalk in Midtown Atlanta. And so we got that, but we've gotten American flags. We've gotten, murals. There's just so many fun. We've gotten the beach, so many fun things you can do with sunglasses. And you know what? It never gets old. Now here's he also talks about some like unusual places to look for reflections. And we already talked about the side of a granite building. Here, this is an actual mirrored house out in Palm Springs. And this was an art installation, but the entire house was mirrors. So this was fun. You could see what's down in the canyon. So this is a literal reflection, not tons of creativity, but when you went inside, then you could get the multiple boom, 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 like the never ending reflections that he talks about in the book. So there was lots of cool things you could do here. Now, this is just an old car. And I looked into the light and I could see like the light was capturing the perfect shape of the tree. And so that was just one of those things when you start to look for reflections, you'll really start to notice them and you'll start to notice what's reflected in there. And I think he used this example, but he actually had a bride and a groom in the reflection. So that was just, start looking. I'm telling you, you're going to see reflections everywhere this week. This is so much easier than silhouettes. And again, this is just a cute little, his face is reflected in the table. And I think he used this example in the book as well. So these are just some of the examples that I could come up with. I would love to see you do the exercises. Look for kind of your standard way to find reflections, and then look for, and that's one of his assignments, is just looking for reflections. So look for the obvious places, the mirrors, the bodies of water, the puddles. But can you find other unique places that you could share with us on Instagram and use the hashtag #TheBigGirlSchool so that we can feature you, because we love creative ideas. And again, this topic is a little bit easier. It doesn't require any fancy camera settings. It can be done with your iPhone. So we'd love to see you participate this week and see what you come up with. All right, thanks. Have a good one.